Great. Well, our guests today are from CART High School. The Center for Advanced Research and Technology is a college and career readiness half-day program for juniors and seniors in both Fresno and Clovis Unified School Districts. Teams of teachers, both CTE and academic, combine rigorous academics with technology, design process, entrepreneurial, and critical thinking skills through the lens of the career focus of the lab. The teaching and learning is accomplished through a project-based, hands-on, real-world approach. And today, presenting with us from CART, we have Dr. Rick Watson, the CEO of CART High School, Jill Rossetti, English teacher, and Aaron Andrade, science teacher. Welcome. I'm going to toss it over to you. They have an incredible presentation for us, and then please save up your questions because we have a lot of time at the end to pick their brains and get to learn a little bit more about how CART works. So over to you guys.
So a lot of teachers struggle with students asking the question, why am I learning this? By the time they get to high school, a lot of students have lost their joy and natural curiosity for learning. And we found a way to get that back, that excitement about learning. And it's through teaching collaboratively, through project-based learning, and through letting them pick what lens they want to learn their high school requirements from. Our lens is forensic science. Our class is geared towards forensic science, but we have many other lenses that can be focused on through different careers at our school. And Dr. Watson's going to tell you about that.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I'm going to spend just a few minutes giving you a little deeper overview of the CART program and how it works. As Corby mentioned earlier, we are what's called a Joint Powers Authority operations agreement between two school districts in Central California. Fresno Unified, which is the fourth largest school district in California with 74,000 students, and Clovis Unified, which has 42,000 students. Fresno Unified has 7 comprehensive high schools and Clovis has 5 comprehensive high schools. Each of our labs offers career and technical education focus through courses, along with integrated academic rigorous courses that are both UC A to G approved and approved for graduation from high school. They also are career pathways that our students would be interested in and are interested in, and also are aligned with the forecast of the labor stats out so that we know these are areas where there will be careers for our students once they graduate and go on to college. Also, our model is aligned to the project-based hands-on approach, which aligns to industry standards, then with the integrated core academic courses, and it's all taught through the lens of the career. The concept of CART was born in the late 1990s by one of our superintendents who had a vision for a tech ed school and wanted to have a place for students to go separate from their home schools. Although back in that time, technology was newer in education and it was a bit of a risky venture. So this superintendent reached across to Fresno Unified, and there was a joint partnership born from that. And then the importance of career, the business, industry, and community partnerships were part of that original design. So our school districts put together an educator team who worked on the educator model, and the business and industry folks put together the business and leadership model. One of the unique parts of CART is that while we're a public high school, we have our own board of directors. We have 7 board members on our board that help us to kind of reach out and look at the approach and the direction that CART would go into the future. The CART strategic plan is one of the activities that our staff undertook that aligns with the business model at CART. We undertook this a couple of years ago. And our strategic plan, as with most company strategic plans, has a vision, a mission. What is unique to CART are design principles and 3 aims. And just to elaborate on the uniqueness of our design principles are cognition, academic rigor, relevance and real world, technology, and then we added a P, which is very important to us, which is personalization. and that is the relationship building that happens between our teachers and our students. And so that's kind of what we wrap all of our work around, is through our design principles. You can see on the screen is our strategic plan, and we have 3 aims. It's college and career readiness, industry connections, marketing, building relationships, and recruiting. And just to elaborate on one of those, the industry connections is really foundational to the model of CART. And it is foundational in that it helps our teachers to provide that real world and relevant experience for students. It helps them provide career exploration for our students. And it also helps them when they design their projects, that the outcomes of that project are aligned to the current industry standards. So that's very important to us. The other part of CART that's very, very unique and intentional is our culture. And as we said earlier, we have 13 different high schools from 2 very different districts, very uniquely different school districts that feed into CART. We're a half-day program, so we have 2 sessions. We have an AM session and a PM session, and we have 2 that it's a repeat, and we have separate sets of students. And so students spend half of their day at CART and half of their day back at their home school. And what's great about that is the students can actually take advantage of everything their homeschool offers, along with being able to participate in this unique model called CART. All of our students have chosen a pathway. Jill and Aaron are going to talk about their pathway in just a few minutes, but we have 12 different career-focused pathways here at CART. And what's the other unique part of it is it comes from the 13 different high schools, and that is we have very different demographics, socioeconomic backgrounds that come in from our students, and they really do mirror their home schools and their district's demographics. And that's really important because our students wouldn't have this opportunity otherwise to be able to work alongside students that come from different home schools, different backgrounds, different experiences, kind of like you would when you're in the workplace working on teams. And they really do learn a great deal from each other because of their different backgrounds and experiences. Our teaching staff here at CART is dedicated to CART, but uniquely, we have half of our teachers that work for one district and half of our teachers that work for the other district. So it can be interesting to navigate because as a public high school, we still sit in the middle of 2 very different districts, and we have to navigate them very differently. But most of the time we're in the middle and we're kind of independent and unique, and we really like that. But we do have to rely on our districts in terms of that bureaucracy that we have to work through. College and career readiness is really key to what we do, and it's important for us to have those partnerships with our higher ed organizations here in the Central Valley, and to have those community, industry, and business partnerships so that we really are preparing kids for college and career. And our teacher teams are made up of 3 teachers, and we have in every lab an English teacher and another academic teacher. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jill and Aaron, and they're going to talk about their particular lab.
So we teach in the forensic science lab. I am a chemistry teacher by trade. Jill is an English teacher. We have another teacher who's actually in the other room holding down the fort with all of our students who are working away, and she is a physics teacher. So hiring at CART is really, it's absolutely crucial because if the team doesn't work, the curriculum doesn't work, and in turn, the students feel it. And that's not anything that, that we want to happen. So hiring is really, really important. And at a traditional school, you know, the principal sits down and they meet with the candidates, and then they pick the one that they think would be the best. For CART, the team really has to be involved in that, because if the personalities don't connect, or if the general philosophies about teaching are totally on opposite ends of the spectrum, then it becomes really hard to make that team work. So we sit down, we meet with them with a variety of different teachers to get other opinions. We sit down as a team and really focus with candidates to see who's going to be the best fit for our lab. We also, at the beginning of each school year, when there's new teams, we do what we kind of call onboarding, which is a little bit like getting hit in the face with a fire hose, because there's just so much information that's most teachers are not used to this type of model. Team teaching is hard. It's important that they understand as they're being hired that you have to be able to collaborate and you have to be able to give up some things that you have maybe traditionally been doing for a long time. You have to be flexible and you have to be able to adapt. So it's really important as we're hiring people that we're getting the right people in place for the team and for the students. At the beginning of the school year, we really go over how, like, logistics. How are you going to plan? We have 3 hours a day with our students. Does that mean we're doing all forensics all day long, or do I need to pull them to do a little bit of chemistry and Jill needs to pull them to do some English stuff? How is that all, like, logistically going to work? When are you going to plan all this stuff? We've found that we have maybe once a week real formal planning, but really we're working together and bouncing ideas off of each other all day long, because we have the benefit that we are in fact in the same classroom.
So we find that using simulations and projects is super engaging for students. You get that little spark of a kindergartner walking in the room. You see that glimpse of how excited they used to be when they were first learning and they went to school for the first time. We put a crime scene in and they walk in and they're like, oh, I know what happened. And they start walking around the scene and they're looking under the desk and they're looking under the couch in the scene and going, oh, what is that? And they think that they know what happened. And it's really just a trick in order to get them to learn how to use science and use English, because they're going to write up the report, they're going to write observational notes, they're going to do English, they're going to do science connected to the crime scene, but it's just a fun way to hook them and get them invested. We also find that it seamlessly brings in so many different standards with a crime scene, for example, because you are doing all of those different science and English tasks all at once in one classroom, and we're able to do it simultaneously instead of splitting them apart and doing English and splitting them apart and doing science. We also find that it makes the concepts stick more. They understand why they have to know the pH of that clear liquid in the glass, because is it poison? Is it something? Is it water? Is it something else? Is it alcohol? And so they're invested in learning why the science is important. And it also hits a lot of multiple intelligences, because our kids that are very kinesthetic and are antsy and don't like just sitting in a desk all day are able to get up and move around and interact with something. So it's also really good for different levels of learning. For example, we have super high level AP students who get straight A's. We have the lowest students who struggle and who are just barely hanging on. All of those students can get something different out of the same crime scene because they're going to notice different things. They're going to collaborate with other students, and it really brings out the best in all of them.
Since we are forensic science, crime scenes really lend themselves well to these simulations. So these are a couple examples of scenes that we've set up. As you'll see, like, this is a car crash simulation. And one of the things that we did is we just called the local tow yard and said, hey, by the way, we're high school teachers. We want to set up this project. Is there any way you can help us? And they said yes. And not only did they bring the car out, they let us destroy it and add a bunch of stuff to it, take things out, and then they towed it away for us. And they've been doing it ever since, every year when we call and ask them, because we found that if you're just willing to reach out and ask for things that you need, especially teachers, that a lot of the community is willing to help. So we set up these big simulations, and the students need to know the information in order to be able to solve it. So these are just some of the things that we hit in this one project. And this took years to fine tune. So just to kind of throw that out there, this was not our first foray into projects immediately, but you can see here, we cover basic just reading and writing and public speaking standards. We cover tons of chemistry and lots of physics. And then because we are a career focused school, we want to show the students how to really investigate for crime scenes. So we use real techniques that all came about from meeting with people in the community who work in these professions, and asking them, how do you do this? How can we, in some cases, mock do it? But how can we do this with our students so that they really understand how to investigate correctly? And they're willing to do the work. They're willing and they want to learn the science because they know that that's going to help them solve this case.
For the English involved in this project, we try to keep it as real as possible. So we reach out to community mentors at local forensics labs, and we've just asked them, can we have some of your reports? And they redact some of the things, you know, they black out some of the parts that they don't want us to show who victims are, but we can see the format that they write in, and then we teach our students to write in that format. And the kids are never like asking me, why am I having to write this report? They're not complaining because they're getting to do it. They're getting to do something they would do in a job that they are interested in. And so it's really a lot of buy-in with the writing. And the way that we get these community mentorships, something like Erin said, we just call and we ask them. And we have some that have come back year after year after year after year. We have this professor down here, Dr. Eric Hickey. He's an expert in forensic psychology. He's a profiler, and he comes in during our forensic psychology unit, and he teaches the students, and it makes it so much more authentic because he's interviewed some of these criminals and the kids just eat it up. And we have a project at the beginning of the year where we have students cold call professionals and find, because we each assign them a different career in forensics, careers that go to crime scenes. This project right here in the middle is a K-9 officer. Their project was K-9 officer, and they had to reach out and make a phone call, a cold call to a police department, make an interview time. They had to show up and figure out a way to get there. And so it's a lot of people skills and like life skills that they're doing along with interacting with community mentors. And it really makes the curriculum more authentic because they're seeing, oh yes, this is exactly what they're doing in the real world. And this is what I might do if I go into this career.
We've also asked our mentors, what kind of technology do you use in your profession? So one of the things that our local police department said is we use crime scene drawing programs and face drawing programs. So we were fortunately able to purchase both of those, and our students now get to use this technology that is the exact same technology that they would be using if they go into this field. So we really we focus on just giving kids authentic experiences that if they were to go into forensics in any fashion, they would recognize.
And they're learning about all of these different types of evidence like fingerprints and blood spatter, but we also want them to learn the rules involved with actually going and collecting that evidence from the scene. So we set up these simulated scenes, and not only are they just investigating what happened, they are properly following the chain of custody rules. We have a makeshift little property room we set up in one of our hallways in our classroom where they have to go and check the property in and check it out and sign it. And the way that we tell them why that's important is we learn about the O.J. Simpson case, and they learn about how botched all of the forensic investigation was in that case and why it's important that they do the right thing. And all of that is leading towards our culminating activity.
So we also are teaching them the science concepts in order for them to be able to analyze their evidence. So we've worked with our local Department of Justice Crime Lab and said, hey, how do you guys do this? And some of it is realistic and we can do it. And some of it, we don't unfortunately have the budget for a multi-million-dollar, DNA machines that just do it for them. But we've asked, what are some ways that we can simulate it? Just like I can't give the students like actual drugs to test, but I can find white powders that behave similarly to said drugs. But I didn't know any of that information. So I had to ask them, how do you do it? So they really help guide our curriculum to be as authentic as we can give them. Also, another thing we do, can't do an autopsy, right? But we can simulate it on like a fetal pig. So we just try to make it as real as possible for the students. And the reason that they need to know all the internal organs and where they go and how they work is because they're going to now apply it to this autopsy that has to do with the project.
So the culminating activity for this project is a trial. The students in their group of experts, like we have a shoe print expert group, a blood spatter expert group, they all testify about what they found at the scene, how they collected it properly, what they determined about the scene. There's a whole story. All of the topics are connected. And so they all are testifying and they have a little piece of the puzzle. So every group reveals a little bit more of the clues to what happened in the case. And we always save like the best clues for last. So it's like a twist ending. But the way that we kind of get the kids ready for this trial is we talked to the Department of Justice in our local lab, and they said that if they are hiring somebody at the Department of Justice, the final stage of their job interview is to have a mock interview simulating a trial. And they told us that if they don't, if they aren't able to narrow down all their very scientific and technical science, like jargon that they use in their field, if they're not able to boil it down for a simple juror, a lay person that comes in and is listening to the testimony, then they don't even hire them. So this is a good buy-in to tell the kids, you have to be able to do this in the real world. If you want a job like this, you have to be able to explain all of these precise things that you did when you tested and analyzed to a normal person who's never taken our class before. And the normal people are their parents. We invite their parents to come as the jurors, and the parents have to be able to understand all of the little things, the technical things they're talking about in order to make a decision about who is guilty in our trial. So it's just a nice buy-in between the community and our students. So how do we get to the point where we can throw this big project at them? It does not start right away. The beginning of the year, we have to train them. We have to give them all the skills that they're going to need for this project. So like Rick mentioned before, we do have a chunk of time every day. We have 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, which is great block schedule. We have a lot of time, but we are given the freedom to figure out what do we want to do in that 3 hours every day. We don't have bells. We don't have delineated certain periods of the day. So we can spend all day collecting evidence. If we have the car just donated to us and we want to go outside and collect, we can spend half the time doing English. We can spend half the time doing science. Sometimes we keep, like usually our our biggest class is probably like 70 something, and our smallest class is usually like 60 something. We will take our students sometimes and we'll just have them all day long in the same room. That's where they are right now. They're in we call it the big room. They're in the big room right now together with one of our other teachers. Sometimes we will split into 3 different rooms. This is one of our smaller rooms. And we will each be delivering, like I'll be doing an English lesson, Erin will be doing a chemistry lesson, and Christy will be doing a physics lesson. And we're just building up their base of knowledge so that we can throw these big projects at them when they're ready. And what they really like about the grading of these big projects is we call them like a triple dip grade. Like the trial is a triple dip because they can get credit for public speaking and knowing how to, look at the jury and look in the right place when they're answering questions. They get a science grade because they're explaining the science that they used, and they get a technology grade because they are using their slides to show us all the different technology or all of the scientific techniques they used. So it is it's all rolled into one, kind of like a job would be. A job, you do all these different types of tasks all day long. You're doing math, you're doing English, all at the same time. You don't break it up into different spaces where you do it. So it's just a different way of delivering high school and kind of making it fun for students where they see the application.
Yeah, it's very integrated. And this is just how it started. Literally, that's the piece of paper we used to chicken scratch this out. And we just started with, what do we want to cover? What are some of the standards in chemistry I want to hit? What are some of the standards in physics? And some of them didn't fit. So it meant I had to push them off. And in a normal traditional way, it's a little out of order, quote unquote. But we made it work. So what do we want to cover? Who's going to cover what? We have large classes, so we needed lots of different evidence. And how can we incorporate all those different pieces of evidence into one story? And the story really is what makes this. But we have to know what the final answer needs to be in order to be able to get the students to that. So we definitely use backward mapping in order to do that.
So we have to be really organized with a project like this. We have to know, like, okay, Erin's fingerprint's going to be on the wheel of the car. My fingerprints are going to be on the windows of the car because Erin is the suspect and they need to find her prints in there. We have to make sure everything is dialed in and where it's supposed to be. But we have to start with what the end result is and backwards map it. And so we use understanding by design. We backwards map everything that we do. And then we divide up the groups in kind of specialty areas. Like we are each responsible for a third of the class, a third of the groups. Like Erin will take the toxicology and the drug groups, the things that are more chemistry related. Christy will take the accident reconstruction and the blood spatter because that's more physics related. I will take the easier science topics to handle because I'm an English teacher. I know science, but I take the easier ones like the shoe prints and the fingerprints that are just kind of matching scientific topics. And then we're responsible for the formative assessments of knowing that they're getting it along the way, because we can't all be responsible for this. I mean, there's like 12 different labs going on in one day. whenever we're doing the analysis. You can walk to a different table. This kid is doing blood spatter analysis. This kid's looking at bones. This kid's looking. And so it's a lot going on at once. So that's how we kind of narrow it down and make sure that we're all responsible for a certain set of groups and grading them and making sure that everybody's understanding what they're supposed to be doing so that when we get to the trial, everybody is where they should be.
So the logistics of this can be a little daunting, but this is definitely something that could be even done individually with an individual teacher in their own classroom. So we've always said at CART that you have to have people who buy into team teaching, who buy into project-based instruction in order for this to work. So you would meet with the people involved. Develop what kind of timeline do you have to play with? Do you have a week? Do you have 2 weeks? Do you have 2 months? Our big trial project, that takes about 2 months. And it's pretty intensive daily working to get them to that spot where they can actually answer and testify. We go over who's going to cover what. Like Jill mentioned, like how are we going to get, she doesn't want to be doing fingerprintings and I'm doing fingerprintings, then it's not going to work. So who's going to be covering what? And what do we need in order for the students to be able to successfully find out what that drug is, or successfully figure out how much alcohol was in somebody's system, and understand the science concepts that go along with that as well. We've always said story is important. Story is the fun part. The fact that the students go out and they think they know exactly what happened, and then there's twist after twist after twist that come out in the trial, and they're just, there's the need to know. There's the need to pay attention because they're just invested. They have this tiny piece of the puzzle and they don't know everything else. And when it comes out, they are often, there's like audible shocked, what, in the classroom, which is always fun to hear. We definitely, like I said, we have to do front loading in order for them to be able to understand some of these concepts. In order to be able to understand how to figure out the speed of a car at the time of a collision, they need to have some background physics there. So what's the time period? Is it realistic to be able to get all this done in a short period of time? As we mentioned before, the props, go for the wow, call somebody up, see if somebody local in your community would donate. Or we're always shocked because we're always like, oh, do we call them, do we not? And we're always shocked at how many times they just say absolutely. And hey, by the way, do you want this too? Our local DOJ lab will send me emails and say, hey, something is expired, do you want this? And it's still going to work. And I say, absolutely. But that all comes from the fact that we've now had a relationship with them for the last 10-ish years. Same thing at our local police department. One of our guest speakers has been coming here since even before I started here 16 years ago, even before, and he will periodically, hey, something's expired, I can't use it in my real life, but it will still totally work, so you should take it. And not only that, but then he shows me how to use it, which I really appreciate. Another really important step is, as you're figuring out projects of this magnitude, is how are you going to deliver the instruction? We separate kids sometimes in groups, we jigsaw them, sometimes they all go through to all the stations, but those are just all the kind of logistical things that you need to have figured out before you kind of launch into a project like this. And then lastly, what is the assessment going to be? How are you going to figure out that they actually learn something through this project? Is this going to be performance-based? Is this going to be a formative assessment? But really, it's all just about creating an experience for students that they just won't forget. I can't tell you how many students have come back years and years and years later and said, I still remember sitting in that trial and I sat right there and I remember it years and years later. And that's what it's all about. Most kids aren't going to remember that one thing they read in a textbook, but they are going to remember the experience. So that is our presentation. We'd love to answer any questions you have for us.
Thank you so much. I know that I hope everyone in the room is just as excited about hearing this as I am. There's so many things that this makes me think about. Also, I wish that I could have been a student in this school. I think it sounds really incredible what you're doing and how you're using a team-based model to approach really interesting approaches to teaching. So if you have a question, which I'm sure that you do, I don't know how you could have seen that without having some. So go ahead and unmute and offer it out, or put it in the chat, or raise your hand, your little digital hand, and we can call on you. I see Rashna already has a question in the chat. Do you wanna say anything about that? she was asking if you ever work with film and industry to create, to like capture some of the stories that you develop, and then also using some of the forensic science movies or shows to add to research elements. Rashna, do you want to say anything else about your question? Oh, never mind. There's a toddler
He
about.
gets that. Zoom and
Thank you
background.
about that. I was just curious. I appreciate you framing my question. I'm sorry I can't turn on my video. Yeah, I was just curious, being in California and whatnot, if you worked with the film industry.
That's a really good question.
We have not, but we are inspired by true crime and by stories. One of the stories we read in the English portion of our class is Catch Me If You Can. And we're doing a white collar crime unit right now. And the kids love the tie-in because they see why it's relevant, because it's a true story. We watch the movie. We also have them learn about check fraud and different things. We get inspired by different true crimes that happen.
Mainly our curriculum is driven by our mentors and them kind of showing us. Our entire forensic psychology unit came from Dr. Hickey, who said, hey, by the way, but now what's fun is we do show clips of movies and ask the students to be able to, profile that type of person using the traits. Or so we definitely also like to see when they can point out things that are wrong. So we'll show an episode of CSI and they have to say that's not right and that's not right, because now they know how to actually do it.
They're not even wearing their gloves. How can they even do that scene? So we like for them to be able to pick apart what they're doing wrong in Hollywood.
Yeah, and I would add that we have a multimedia lab where some of the students are training in digital videography. And sometimes we do have them actually work with other labs to capture their projects. So there's a lot of times we do cross lab kinds of things. I know forensics reaches out to biotech and psychology. And, the great thing about CART is students can come for 2 years. And they usually will take a second lab. So a lot of times kids will start with forensics with Jill and Aaron and then go to psychology. Or they might go to law and policy. And so they are really getting a wider understanding of what may happen in both of these industries by being able to take another lab.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and ask a question. So I'm Carly. I actually am from Clovis and went to Buchanan. And actually Jeannie Escalera is a good family friend of mine. So she's a former teacher at CART. I'm just curious, like obviously thinking about this project, like, and I remember when my friends did the crime scene, like I know some of these things, like it stood out to me and I wasn't even there. What do you think has been some of the significant changes in evolution of CART as, you launched in the 1990, I believe, like how, obviously careers change consistently. Like how have you guys had to stay nimble given how much work and planning goes into a big scale project like that?
That's a great question. Rick, you want to talk about that new lab we've got going?
Yeah, I think that's what's important is I mentioned earlier that we want to make sure the labs we offer are of interest to students and aligned with where the labor industry is going. And so we have labs that we had in the past, we no longer have. And we add new labs when those kinds of things become available. And so our most recent lab we offered was, or not most recent, but one of the newer ones was psychology that came in because that was something that we were looking at, with mental health and things like that becoming important. We're offering a new lab. We have 3 technology labs, and something that we've found out in our research that's new in the tech industry is the way they train project managers. And it's a new field called UX design. And so our technology teachers have said, hey, we're looking at this going out in the tech industry. It looks like it's a very prominent area. Why don't we start building a lab in UX design? Because it will align really well with our current tech labs, but also with our digital marketing and advertising lab, with our psychology lab. And so as we see those things change, we need to evolve with that. And sometimes our students lose interest in some of our labs. And so when that happens, we may look at another lab or drop a lab because of that. We also look at our principles and practices, and we're always, as an organization, looking at how we can get better and stay cutting edge. And so as a teacher group and as a staff group, we always work together on looking at what are other people doing out there? How are things changing in the project-based hands-on kind of instructional industry? So yeah, because we're an elective program, and we have to go out and find our students to come here. We have a tour group right here, right now, touring
Right.
CART right outside, looking probably in their windows. So we recruit our own students to come here. So, we could end tomorrow if we don't work hard to stay cutting edge and stay up with the current trends.
And that's, I think, all of our projects too. We are constantly evolving them. Last year was hard for us because we were on Zoom, and we have this huge project that involves the kids working together around a cart. Like, we couldn't do that. So we had to really evaluate what parts could we do, what parts could we make them do at their own house. So we're always trying to we evolve. I mean, every year we're how can we make our projects better? What can we do? What can we add? And every time we talk to a mentor, we're asking, is this still what you do? Could you add this? Hey, I'm thinking about. So they really do help us as we try to figure out what are the best projects for our students.
They help keep it fresh.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're thinking about community educators and mentors as a part of your planning and your professional development as a team, as well as having them come in and support in the classroom with students. Can you talk a little bit more about how you work with them in terms of your own work as a team, in your professional development?
Yeah, truly, I have reached out to our mentors. I had a student who had some really crazy fingerprints one year, and I reached out to our fingerprint expert at the DOJ lab, and I sent him pictures. And I just said, hey, look, I've never seen this before. I know you probably have. And he got all excited and was, yeah, this is super rare. And then sent me some resources that I could learn about it a little bit more. And then the student sat down and looked at it and really went into more depth with it. So I feel like we are constantly trying to we're always trying to, that whole lifelong learners and wanting to just always be fresh and new and keep up with what's going on. I know a lot of our labs have industry partners where they have twice a year, they sit down with all of their mentors and they go over their projects line by line and make sure that what they're doing still aligns to what's happening in the industry. Because the last thing we want to do is provide students with a project that isn't relevant anymore. So the nice thing too is we've maintained our relationships with these mentors, just via communication and reaching out and asking for help. And oftentimes it goes vice versa. Our environmental lab is incredible with their projects. They have mentors, dozens and dozens of mentors who say, hey, this is a problem I'm having. I want your students to work on it. So it's truly up to date. This is literally somebody up in the mountains working with the forest industry is having this situation, and what can our students do to help them?
Yeah, and I think you're hearing that I'm not involved in this. It is upon the teacher team to really foster and maintain those relationships. And I think part of the drive is what Erin's talking about, is she wants to keep up on her field. And our career and tech ed teachers want to keep up on their field and then share that information with their partner teachers, because Jill teaches science. She's an English teacher by trade. She knows the standards, she knows the curriculum, but she has to teach science because it's so integrated that she's not teaching English by itself every day. And so while we have lots of community partners and through our board, we have those kind of global partnerships that I can sometimes add to what the teachers are doing, but fostering and maintaining those relationships. But it's as easy as Erin said, sometimes just make a cold call somebody, because you'll be surprised how much they really want to get involved. And it took us a while to get the mentors to come in and work with high school students, because They have a stereotypical idea of what a high school student is, but our teachers prepare our students to be able to work with mentors, and our mentors are absolutely astounded at the level of maturity and the knowledge and skills that our kids have. And so they're willing to come in as you build those relationships. And I think that's what's really great about CART.
And Rick, you do help us out every time we ask for stuff. So you are still very much involved.
That part.
Okay, any other questions from the room? Right, I'm going to jump in with another one because I could talk to you guys all day. I wanted to know, you know, this is a lot of teaming together and a lot of working in collaboration. What do you think is a piece of advice that you would give to someone who's trying to do a project in a team-based model?
Start small. I would definitely say start, even if it's just one teacher trying it so they feel comfortable with it, and then get somebody on board who actually is interested in doing it. We've seen multiple benefits, not even, you know, benefits that we didn't even realize could be a benefit. Our students go off to their other school and do fantastic there too, because now they're back to being engaged. I definitely think you need to have the right people involved. And if somebody is not on board and they're just being told you need to do something, it's never going to work. So get the right people and try it. Start small and it can build.
And I think success breeds success. If you can get a small team to take some of these principles and practices and start implementing them, and when they start having success and they see how it affects their students, a lot of time that begins the buy-in process, because other teachers see, oh, well, it's not as bad or as hard as I thought. And earlier, Aaron had mentioned, take some things off their plate. You know, if there's some things you can take off a group of teachers' plate who are willing to be the pioneers in this, do it, because you will see success and it should breed success, hopefully.
There's a good question in the chat about, did our model exist before? So did you?
Yeah, we,
in a
if
framework?
you're familiar at all with the new tech and high-tech models, the new tech network and the high-tech models, our pioneer group of teachers, of which we only have one left, although Jill was here second half of the first year or the second year, they actually went out and visited. The great thing is we have planning year. So that educator group had a whole year to be able to go visit different models, and Napa New Tech was one of the models they went and visited. And we took things like we have ambassadors, our design principles. A lot of that model came from some of those schools that we went and visited in the beginning.
And then in our last minute, someone in the chat asked, you know, a lot of times people share and make things sound really easy, but what is one piece of advice on starting small and preparing students how to work with mentors? And we have 1 minute left, so speed round.
We do, honestly, it's so fun. We pretend call me and make them practice. What are you going to say when you cold call somebody? Because some of them have never done that before. And even that experience is like, we talk about how to shake a hand. I mean, these are very short little lessons that we can have with them that actually really do translate when they speak with mentors.
Yeah, and sometimes they practice on us. So sometimes we can go in the classroom and they can practice on us. And, you know, so that's wherever you can fit, you can get another adult to help in that practice with the teachers. It's another adult.
That is all the time we have today, but thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your projects, and your advice. I really appreciate it. I know that the room feels, even though it's in Zoom, it feels like it has a buzz going. So thank you so much for your time. And I just want to tell everyone in the room, we have a final closing session with Robin Lake from the Center for Reinventing Public Education with Brent. It will be fabulous. Please go back in your agenda and head to that before you head out for the day. And thank you so much, Aaron, Jill, and Rick. It was a delight to get to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.